his VCR to the poor or to his pastor. And when I grew up, well, my idea of being wealthy changed. I don't know if you're realizing my point of view. When I became an adult, I realized that the neighbor with the atmospheric truck was just a worker, that the man who had the grocery store was a first of thousands to buy a color TV, and the youth leader who bought the VCR had only bought it in many payments, and it would all just be thrown away once DVD players arrived. But we had the idea that was being rich, because that's what we were surrounded with. So today, not when you were a kid, today, who represents what you understand of being rich is? Being rich is always related with a parameter that changes. Someone said that the only way to know if you're rich is if you can't find anyone who is on a higher step than you, money-wise. And this parameter of comparative wealth is further complicated by the fact that none of us consider ourselves rich. That's why I was telling you that my personal idea of being wealthy was evolving each season of my life. Wealth is a moving target. Also, did you notice how many rich people don't think they're really rich? I have some friends, not many, but some, who have their own boat at their own dock in Miami Beach, in some places, even in Buenos Aires, Argentina. They have their own boat and their dock. And I'm like, wow, this is great. It's not wealth, they say. It's just a little boat. You should see the yacht that this guy has. That's being rich. So, they don't consider themselves rich because they know people who have more stuff than they do. As they see people who have more, they don't consider themselves rich, and that happens to us all. The wise man wrote in Ecclesiastes 5:10, who loves money, money is never satisfying. Whoever loves wealth can never have enough. What a pearl. Ecclesiastes chapter 5 verse 19 says, furthermore, listen to this, to whom God grants abundance and richness, God grants. It doesn't say the enemy is going to grant you wealth. Who God grants abundance and riches, he also grants to eat from them and enjoy them. Take their share and enjoy, because this is a gift of God. Words of the wise man. And that's why it's urgent for me to make this clear before we continue. I'm not going to be talking about how good it is to be rich. Abraham was rich. He had lots of camels, which means having lots of Mercedes today. I'm not going to talk about that dumb stuff. I'm sick and tired of listening to people talk about Christians being rich. Stop. I want to make it clear what it really means to be wealthy and rich. Because more than half of the world lives with it for an entire month or trimester, believe me or not, with the money that most of us pay per month to watch Netflix, or how much it costs to maintain a cell phone. What you use to maintain a cell phone, some people live a month with that. Once, an American missionary brought a native African to the United States. I've told you this before, but I love saying it because besides, it's a real story. That's why it's fascinating to me. I love to use it, right, to teach a lesson. He brought this African to the United States, a native African, just for a couple of weeks. And once he returned, this man wrote to his children a letter by hand so that he would use it as a memorial to share it with his own children one day. The letter said something like this: children, where I was only 2 weeks ago, there are people so rich, they have their own car. Yes, their own vehicle. They're not many, of course, but they do have one. Then I read that only between 3 and 5% of the world's population has their own car. And some are so rich, they have a house for the car. It's called garage. It protects the car, right, from the cold weather. People don't live there. The car lives there. You know what these people do? They're so rich. They get on their car, they get it out of their own house, and they go to places where there's food. But not like here at home. They're called restaurants. They're so rich, they pay others to prepare them food and serve it to them. That's how rich they are. And some of these rich people are so rich, they eat so much, they're fat. But they keep on eating more and more. They don't care. Because then they're so rich, they go to places called gyms. And they pay others to help them lose weight. That's how rich they are. And these rich people are so rich, they have special rooms called closets or wardrobes. And they're filled with clothes. No, don't laugh, children. I swear. There are rooms to store clothes. No one sleeps there. Only the clothes sleep there. They're on hangers, on shelves, like in a store. Imagine it, kids. So many clothes. Clothes for cold days, for warm days, clothes to work, which is not the same clothes to go to church. It's crazy. I know it sounds crazy, kids, because we always use the same clothes. But rich people, they change their clothes. They combine colors. And I promise you, one day, if God allows us, you too will see it with your own eyes. Wealth is relative, people. And we lose sight of how rich we really are. Now, why don't we feel rich? You're looking at me and saying, I'm not rich. I don't feel rich either. That's why I insist, so that God would speak to us today, we have to agree who this message goes to before we continue. Because otherwise, it's going to be like in the beginning. This message is good for such and such. He has a car, an expensive car in the company. No. Listen, if you eat twice a day, let's take away breakfast and lunch. Let's just say that you eat twice a day. You're within the 4% of today's active wage earners. And by any definition, like it or not, you're rich. If you eat twice a day, you are rich by definition. If besides you eat twice a day, listen, you can take a bath whenever you want in your own home. That is, you have running water, and you may even have a heater. You might have hot water. You're among the 8% of the richest wages in the world. 8% in the entire planet, the entire globe. If you can say, today I feel like taking a bath or a shower. What about if you took a shower in the morning and at night you say, I'm going to take a shower before I go to bed? You're within that population, that 8% worldwide population of the richest people in the world. I say this because to honor God with our wealth, the first thing you need to admit is that you're rich. Otherwise, it's like someone else has to do it for you. You know, we're always waiting for someone else to do it. Remember the message, here I am, send him? Well, just how there's so many Christians say, here I am, Lord, send him. He can do that. There are other thousands who would say, oh, if I were only rich, I too would be generous. I'm tired of hearing this throughout the pandemic. If I had a church in the United States, then if I were to live there, then I too would do that. And I'm surprised by the behavior that certain Christians have when it comes to talking about money. And especially those who don't like to hear about money, they have no idea that Jesus spoke more about money than about heaven, hell, prayer, all combined. Of all the sermons Jesus preached, money is what Jesus most talked about. In Jesus' sermons, he spoke a lot about it. If you look at Jesus with brand new eyes, you're going to notice what he spoke about the most was of money. This goes for those that say, that's not the way Jesus would speak. You don't know Jesus. If you go and read the Gospels with brand new eyes, you'll notice, when I say brand new eyes, it's the Jesus we always knew about, but without that prejudgment. Was Jesus obsessed with it? No, he wasn't. But he knew that we would be. He knew that for human beings, there's a certain charm in possessions, a dangerous control that's so hard to get rid of. And I think that Jesus also understood that this issue is especially problematic because the worship of money is difficult to identify. One reason for this, I think, is that it disguises itself in many ways. One person can spend a lot. They can constantly spend while others can be very austere. They're not going to eat a banana because they don't want to throw away the peel. And both share the same reasons, even though they're on the same types of behavior. The behavior of one can be different from the other. Nevertheless, if both people are using money to feel safe and to feel they're in control, well then, it's because they both love money. Do we agree? You see, I want to leave this clear because otherwise I can't continue to tell you what God put in my heart for you. Many people on social media said, oh, this message is good for this guy that I know who's rich. No, this message is for you. Because you can live in a tin can, in a tiny house, and love money. You can earn a minimum salary and love money. Therefore, according to Jesus, it's very difficult for you to inherit heaven. Jesus is not going to say, let's see how much money you have in the bank account to see who can go into heaven and who can't. Jesus is going to measure the heart, not the money. So I insist, you can live in a very poor place, you can live in a shack, and if you love money, you can say, how can I love money if I don't have any? If you're desperate for it, the problem is in the heart. Just like the millionaire, who also loves money. The problem is that most of us think that we don't love riches or wealth. We're not prone to believe that money is an idol for us. You know why? Because greed and materialism, the two aspects of money idolatry, are very much camouflaged. You know how? Almost always by association. Look, we almost always compare ourselves with people of our level. Like I was saying, the level of my neighborhood, my childhood neighborhood in Billinghurst, the rich man, was the neighbor who had the truck or the youth leader who had the VCR. We don't compare ourselves with Donald Trump or Bill Gates. We do it with a guy who lives around the block. So sometimes we live and work within a small world of our environment, and we allow our environment to determine our ideas of what's normal, what's enough, and what's necessary. We say, no, I'm not a miserable person. Look at him. Look at the remodeling of his house. Look at the money that he spends on expensive clothes. Look what he spends on maintaining that swimming pool. That's being rich. And that's what Jesus reminds us in Luke 12:13. One from among the people told him, "Teacher, tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." Jesus answered him, "Man, who made you think that I'm going to be the judge or the referee among you?" And he said to the people, "Be careful. Leave all greed aside. The life of a person does not depend on the many things that one possesses." Look at that firm lesson. Be careful. Jesus warns us. Be alert. Because he knew how rigid this idol can be. You know, materialism is a sin that, unlike many other sins, is very difficult for us to detect in our own lives. I can stand here before the congregation and say, who here is struggling with lust? And maybe not everyone's going to raise their hands. Some people might say, yeah, that's me. If I ask who's struggling with pride, some people might raise their hand. If I say who's struggling with greed and selfishness, not everyone's going to raise their hand. Almost no one. The thing is, you're not going to find Jesus saying, be careful, make sure you're not committing murder. No, you don't have to do it, period. If you're strangling your mother-in-law, you know what you're doing. But greed is not like that. Greed is, materialism is, being greedy is inherently self-deceptive. Because money usually generates a certain toxin to the soul. And above all, our materialistic culture doesn't help us too much. So Jesus wasn't ambiguous regarding the danger of this idol. In one occasion, he says in Matthew 6:24, no one can serve two masters. For he will either hate one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. So I insist, I need you at this point of the message to change the paradigm of, this message is good for this woman who has lots of money. Stop already. I need you and I together, if I'm your friend now, I want us to examine this whole matter from the perspective of, hey, maybe this selfish and wealthy person can easily be me. I'm going to keep my heart sensitive to the fact that maybe God wants to teach me some things today. I thought this was a message for other people, but now it englobes me. Starting from there, I'm going to tell you what God told me to tell you. In first place, everyone, more or less, everything that we have are just things. The definition of a house, not a home, a house, you know what it is? It's just a pile of things with a lid on top. It's a box for stacking things. Some people in reality survived without having one. For example, Jesus. He was never the owner of a house. The thing is that people go through life acquiring things, then die, and they leave their things behind. What happens with these things? Children fight over them. The children who have not yet died, but who are in reality pre-dead people, pre-dead people, because we're all going to die, go to their parents' house. They go through their old things like vultures and decide which things they want to take home. No. God gave me this. That old fan is mine. No, this TV is mine. And once they stopped crying about their loss, they throw dirt on a coffin. They're going to go after these things. Now they're mine. Then those children die. And new vultures are coming for their things. Nations go to war over things. Why do nations go to war? Over things. Families are divided over things. Spouses argue more about things than about any other matter. So imagine it this way. If you had only 1 month to live, you go do a test and they say your problem's not COVID, your problem is that you have 1 month to live. You would be surprised at all the things that really don't matter anymore. If you had 30 days to live, things would not matter to you anymore. Look, bringing them into consideration would be absurd, even immoral to you. Savoring life, extracting the most valuable things of each day would be the most important thing for you from that moment on if you have 30 days to live. The thing is, because we don't know how long we have to live, we don't have an expiration date like a yogurt. You know how yogurts say at the bottom, if at our bottom we would have our expiration date, what's valuable becomes common, and what's common becomes valuable. Why? Because we don't know when we're going to expire. Your lawn, if you do have grass on your house, my father would always mow the lawn. It was a service for him. Your lawn will survive you. Is it bad to have grass, a lawn? No, but the next time you cut it, remember that you're the temporary servant of that lawn. It's not your lawn. You're serving the lawn. One day, someone else is going to take your place. Another one is going to live in your house, and the grass will still be there. It's going to keep on growing. Someone else will end up mowing it until it's removed from the sink, and someone else will be pushing the mower. Prisons are full of thugs and CEOs and presidents who committed crimes to have more things. The majority are there because they wanted more things. Why? They're just things. Things are not treasures. Jesus said, do not accumulate for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and rust can destroy, and where thieves can get in to steal. Rather, store up treasures for yourself in heaven, where neither moth nor rust will eat away, nor thieves will steal. Because where your treasure is, where your treasure is, where your treasure is, your heart will also be there. So this about being rich is not for the person who's necessarily working in Wall Street. I knew people who, in the year 2000, bought a car, 1981 version, a Ford Sierra, and they spent their weekend polishing it. You would dare to touch the car. He would chop off your hand. He was waxing it, looking at it, speak to it. That's what his treasure was. Is it bad to have a car? It's not bad. It's bad to serve it and to love it. The Lord says whoever serves two gods is dead meat. Even if it's a 1981 car. Some people have a car attack and they get a panic attack. I can't believe you crashed my car. More like if it were a son. And Isaiah spoke about how we complicate things. 5:8, Isaiah 5:8 says, woe to those who gather house and add inheritance to inheritance until they are fully occupied. And then he says, would you live alone in all the middle of the earth? In other words, woe to those who add so much to their lives, they have no more room left. Your life is full of things, but those things don't breathe life. And what used to contain a warm, beating heart is now cold and empty. Isaiah wrote these words in the year 600 before Christ, more than 2,700 years ago. It has come to my ears from the Lord of hosts that many houses will be laid waste, the great and beautiful without inhabitant. They're just going to be empty shells. Everything you have is going to be ephemeral. It doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor. Cars, cell phones, ultra-flat plasmas, designer clothes will rot together in democracy of decomposition. You know, an adult finds it funny when a 2-year-old says, this is mine. Because adults know, we know, that 2-year-olds don't get anything by themselves. It's given to them. A 2-year-old doesn't go out to work to buy a toy. It's a gift from someone much older and wiser than them. In general, they don't even take care of their toys. But 2-year-olds are extremely attached to their things. It's mine! And they don't want no one to touch it. And it's their favorite toy. That's why Paul says, when I was an adult, I left things as a child. We become adults and then we become more childish. We hold on to more expensive toys. We say, mine! You consider some of the statements from the scriptures, all right? The earth belongs to the Lord and all that is in it, the world and all who inhabit it. Remember the Lord your God, because it is He who gives you the power to produce this wealth. So if you got something, there's someone who gave you the health and the power to get it. Mine is the silver and gold, says the Lord Almighty, just in case you think it's yours. For many years, I've been in this ecclesiastical environment years now. Some people, when they see me on interviews on CNN or on Vortex or some other place, why don't you talk about Christ? Why don't you preach? Well, because Christians, we're normally not bilingual. We believe we have to preach wherever we go. If we're in a job interview, hallelujah, the blood of the Lamb redeems me from all my sin. Hallelujah. You have to learn to be bilingual. It's not the same thing as being in agreement with sin. To know how to adapt yourself in the place where you are. Otherwise, they'll fire you from your job or wherever you are. So, you have to do what you have to do and reflect Christ without having to speak out loud that much. But I insist with this. For many years now, I'm in this Christian environment. And one of the questions that are frequently asked is, do I have to tithe on everything that comes in, or do I have to pay for my expenses first? And I'm going to give you the translation about this, all right, what this really means. Do I have to give a tithe of everything that comes in, or do I pay for my expenses? Translation. Don't worry, I'm not going to lift up an offering. I'm not going to ask you to tithe. This means, all right, there's something more important than giving an offering and a tithe right now. The translation of this is, how much is the least I can give without God being angry with me? The question is, how many of my things can I keep without getting into trouble? You know what my answer is to all these people? Stay with everything. Keep it. Shove it in your back pocket. Don't give anything. If you're trying to negotiate with God, you're going to live miserable all your life. Don't give anything at all. It's like going to your mother on Mother's Day and saying, Mom, what's the minimum amount of money I can spend on your gift without breaking our relationship so you can still be my mom? I don't know, son, buy me something worth $2. How about $1.50? One day we're going to be held accountable with what God entrusted us. And that day, it could be an occasion of great rejoicing or deep regret. They're not my things. One day I'm going to have to give an account. And one of the most wonderful statements regarding the early church is that there was no one in need among them. There was no one in need. Some people might say, you lost your humility. It doesn't say they were rich, necessarily. There was no one in need. Because if they had things, they would share things. There had never been a community like this before. That's why it makes me laugh when people say, in River, only the rich congregate. It makes me laugh because here, 99.9% of the people are hardworking people. They break their backs working hard all week long. We don't have millionaires here. But there are people who learned how to give, and during the pandemic, I didn't even have to tell them to keep on giving. That's our family. Look, our family, these people here, sent, like I said today, more than $6 million to the rest of the world in 2020. We're Hispanics. Look, in River, they don't need me to preach about giving, because once they give, once they try it, they enter a circle of blessings they never want to get out of. When did you hear me say in the pandemic, oh, come on, please send your money, otherwise we're going to close? Never. Whoever gives knows what he receives and how he's going to be blessed. If something works, you don't have to convince other people to do it. That's why I normally say, there has never been a community like this in the book of Acts. That's the Argentinian that comes out of me. Paul affirmed, because we brought nothing to this world and we're not going to take anything from it. Job said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will leave. So, We're leaving naked and without a penny. In the meantime of our short lives, we acquire some things to put on our body, in our pockets, but in reality, we have to give it back. Nothing belongs to us. We borrow it for a while, and one day you gotta give it back. My mother kept tablecloths and even special lingerie, right? She never used, just in case one day, she said. And one day she had to go. She took the last train home. You know how my mom left? Like everyone else left. Wearing the last dress she had on. It doesn't exist anymore. And this is the core of the message. Our desire for financial security prevents us from giving. Every dollar that I give stops being at my disposal for my protection. However, my feeling of freedom always increases when I give, because giving is a declaration that my security rests in a place that's not the bank. Giving. And don't believe with this, I'm going to lift up an offering. I'm not. We don't need to. We don't need more finances than what we have. That's why we can bless others. We give because we bless others. I'm saying this because we should all learn that giving is an act of trust in God. Otherwise, the bottomless pit of our need is never satisfied. It doesn't matter how much we have. We're always going to be people without enough. You know that for people without enough, there's no lasting satisfaction in the soul? Yesterday, I didn't know that cell phone exists, but now I can't live without it. Really? You didn't know that cell phone existed yesterday? How can you not live without it today? Now, we can be rich in the soul. A rich soul experiences life differently. We experience a sense of gratitude for what we receive, instead of that resentment for what we didn't receive. We face the future with faith instead of with anxiety. Paul himself experienced the richness of being and not having. He discovered whether he lived in luxury or in prison, he had more than enough because he had been freed from the yoke of having. Remember what he said? I know how to live humbly, and I know how to have abundance. In everything and for everything I am taught. So, both to be satisfied and to be hungry, to have abundance and to be in need. He never said that he never had abundance or wealth. He said he knew how to have it. The wealth of having means having more things. The richness of being has to do with giving more things. So when I think about being rich and having wealth, I think about two men. Two men come to my mind that I've known. I don't know how to share this because I know I'm going to get into problems, but to preserve their identities, I'm going to change their names, although in reality, I personally knew both of them. So I'm just going to change their name. I know them both, but I'm not going to say their names. That's it. One of them, I'm going to call Larry. He never got married. He never owned a home, a house. He never took any vacation. He was just friendly. He had a gift for people like I've rarely seen before. He would invite people to join groups, to participate in opportunities, to become friends, and to contribute. He would prepare food for those who are homeless. He saw potential in disencouraged people. He always had like a radar for lonely people. And he also told people what they could become. He could see the potential in their lives. When he had to pass away, a funeral was held for Larry at the Crystal Cathedral. That's where we were before. No one knew how many people would come to the funeral because, after all, Larry never got married. He didn't have any children. He didn't have a regular job. And cars came like waterfalls. I believe the funeral lasted 7-8 hours. The number of people who came to show their respects to Larry The line went all around the Crystal Cathedral, several blocks, and hundreds of people waited in line for hours just to honor him. And during this service and the reception, one person after another expressed how their lives had been touched by Larry. And none of the stories made reference to Larry's possessions or his wealth. They were all about Larry's capacity to love. We asked ourselves, how could he afford to give all of his time to people? In that same decade, another funeral was held for a man we're going to call Dr. Miller. With more than 90 years of age, Dr. Miller became the best-known man in the world for knowing celebrities, the enormous fortune he had managed to gain. He was a millionaire speaker, philanthropist. The Los Angeles Times called him the giant of capitalism and confidant of world leaders. He even had a wax statue at the Hollywood Wax Museum without being an actor of the industry. His last 2 years of life, he lived in a nursing home, sharing a room with other abandoned elderly people. And the day he died, one of his daughters had to make a collection to pay for his coffin. When he died, almost no relatives attended his funeral. Those who carried his coffin were his chauffeur, a nurse, and other personal employees. A man was famous, honored, wealthy, related, powerful, envied, and feared. The other prepared snacks and food for those who were homeless. Who do you think was the richest man before God? Look at this passage, taken from a letter that the Apostle Paul wrote to his young colleague Timothy, who at that time led a church in Ephesus. Teach the rich of this world not to be proud, nor to trust their money, which is so unstable. Tell them they should put their trust in God, who gives us abundantly everything we need so that we can enjoy it. The people whom Paul was writing to, or better well said, the word of advice, were for Christians who worshipped with the music of Miel San Marcos, Elevation. They attended church and repeated the words of their apostle. It was those type of people. It's not like he said, go to the rich of Greece. No, the ones in your church. He even had to remind them, hey, as time goes by, don't start to believe the empty promises of money. Don't be fooled into thinking it can provide security. Have you ever had a conversation with yourself that looks like this? Oh, if I only could have my own house, that's all I'm asking for. All I want is just a little house. Humble. If I could have my own house, then I would be secure and I wouldn't worry about anything else. I just want a safe roof. Of course, all the people who already have a roof say, oh, if I could only have a car, my own car, and that my children would never lack anything. I want them to go to college, and then I wouldn't worry about anything else. And people who have their own roof and have their own car and their children go to college say, the only thing I want, you know what? I just want a weekend house so that I can go to the beach every now and then. I work hard so much. That's all I'm asking. How much money do you think you need to be completely financially secure? It seems to me that the answer to that question is the same for us all. More than what you have now. And many feel that their problem is in their income. Oh, all I'm asking for, I just want to earn a little bit more, that's all. It's not about your income. It's about a spiritual root. Because when your income rises, your lifestyle also increases, and it gets in tune, swallowing every opportunity you have to give to others. Your income rises and also your lifestyle. And the root of all this is a spiritual problem. Proverbs 18:11 says, the wealth of the rich man is his fortified city, and like a high wall in his imagination. Can you see the key word here in this verse? It's imagination. It's not real. Not only multimillionaires are deluded with this illusion, material wealth can't provide emotional or spiritual security. Ask any poor rich kid who grew up surrounded by things rather than love and attention. A few years ago, someone approached me and said, Dante, listen, this is between us. Off the record, I want you to pray for me. I'm about to collect an inheritance that the lawyers locked up. An inheritance that's locked up. If I collect it, then count on a good part of money for the church, for River. Pray, because if I do get it, more than half is going to be for River. He told it to me like if it was a bribe. Well, I'm going to pray a lot then. I asked him, hey, do you distribute some of your money now? I mean, forgive me for asking, but do you tithe? Do you give an offering for some type of cause, some individual? Don't tell me, yeah, but I do it secretly, because that's what miserable people always say. When I give secretly. I'm asking. You opened your heart, you wanted me to pray for your inheritance? Well, I'm going to ask you now, if you ever given before the inheritance. No, I earned the minimum wage. Well, what makes you think that you're going to be more generous with an inheritance if you're not generous with a minimum wage? Perhaps this is one of the biggest illusions regarding money. We think that the only reason we're not generous is because now we're very tight on our budget and we don't earn much. People say, when I earn more money, I'm going to start to become generous. But the signs follow those who believe, not those who believe follow the signs. The problem is that it doesn't work like this. Several recent surveys indicated that the people with lower wages actually give a higher percentage of their income than what the rich people do. That's exactly what happens in a river. Do you know how we became a barn house for so many people? A storehouse? Well, the majority had to close their installations or sell their buildings. Not only didn't fire anyone or lay anyone off, but we had to give them an increase in their salary during this year or last year. Many of them who worked hard. Do you want to know how it is that we did this? And how we can furnish 2,000 houses? Because those who give the most are those who seem to have less to give. The more you receive, the more difficult it becomes for you to be generous. So if you can't be generous by earning a minimum wage, I assure you, you won't do it when you get a raise. If you can't be generous with what you have now, you're never going to be generous with more. Do you remember what Jesus said to the rich man in Luke 18:18? He said, I fulfilled all the commandments. I did everything. Hold on, Jesus said. You still lack one thing. Sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and you'll have treasures in heaven. Then come and follow me. And then hearing this, he became very sad because he was very rich. When Jesus saw that he was saddened, he said, how hard is it for the rich to enter the kingdom of God? He didn't say those who have more than $1 million. No, wealth can be a car, 1980 version. It could be your DirecTV satellite dish, your last version of your cell phone, what for you is a master. That which you can't live without. How difficult it is, because it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. And regarding to this, I'm not going to presume that I'm an expert in Greek philology, because I'm not. By the way, if someone thinks I committed a mistake, instead of saying a different word, philology is the science that studies the structure and evolution of a language and its historic and literal development. So I'm not going to act like I'm an expert in Greek philology. I want to clarify, I don't have a messianic complex And I'm not going to judge anyone. But I've heard many people, and I read about many people who constantly said things they heard. You know how people repeat things that they hear, and they repeat it so much and they believe it? Like those who believe, he said, "Don't worry, the dogs are barking, Sancho." Signs that we're moving forward. And that was never said in Don Quixote. It's a phrase, it's a myth. Whoever really read Don Quixote, he never said that. Because Don Quixote never said, "The dogs are barking, sign that we're moving forward." It's never said there. So, in people's imaginary world, they believe that what Sancho Panza said, and that's what Don Quixote responded, and it's not in the story. There are lots of myths, and among the myths that we have in our Christian atmosphere is repeating. No, the eye of a needle is that there was an entrance into Jerusalem known as the Eye of the Needle, through which camels could pass only on their knees and with great difficulty. The problem with this is that it's simply not true. First of all, because God said, whoever loves richness will never enter the kingdom of heaven. And in this case, camels with difficulty could go in. He says, no, it's impossible. And there was never such entry into Jerusalem, never in its history. The only thing is pictures that circulate on the web that don't even belong to Jerusalem, not even the Middle East of the time. I was in Jerusalem with Jewish experts. We had a guide, a tour guide, who laughed out loud in my face when I asked him about the little door or the entrance. He said, "It's amazing how you Gentiles force text, because they don't get it. You invented there was a small door so that a camel can go in through." I'm like, well, then explain. He said, the word the Lord used was not camel, referring to a camel, camello, but he used camilo, which was a cable, a rope, a thick rope. Jesus said camilo, not camello, and the scribes and translations did the rest. Jesus should have never had, that is known, much relationship with camels. Those animals were for the rich and for merchants. He did have a relationship with fishermen, with nets and boats, with camelos, which were ropes or thick ropes used to tie boats. He said it's easier for a rope to enter the eye of a needle for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Never. So, threading a marine rope on a needle is impossible. But this isn't the point of the question. You can argue about that later. The rich young man was allowing his money to inhibit his freedom to depend on God instead of his wealth. Who knows? What if the rich man said, "All right, I'm going to do it." Jesus could have said, no need to. I just wanted to test your heart. I'm not saying it happened. I'm just thinking it could have happened. But Jesus wanted him to experience the reality that while it's true that receiving can be good, the greatest benefit is when we dare to give. That's the lesson that I think we all need to know when it comes to our money and our lives. You know what we need? We need to discover the joy of letting go, releasing. We need to learn to simply drop our money and entrust it to God. I've shared many times in the beginning of the pandemic, we got together with a team. They announced that churches had to close, and my question was to the accountants, to the executive pastor, how much money do we have to survive with the church doors closed? It's not a mystery, it's not a secret that closed church doors means no offering, nothing. He said, well, 2-3 weeks at most, and then we're going to have to fire people, and then we can't even pay off and honor our debt. And I felt like saying, well, let's gather what we can. But then I thought, what did I teach for so many years to people? If you have a little lunch, just some fish and bread, but you give it to the Lord, in the hands of the Lord, these fish and bread plus God does a miracle. Without God, you'll just eat the lunch and then you'll die of hunger later on. So, I remember I told the guys of the team, let's do something. Let's die with dignity. Hey, let's die with dignity. Why don't we go out and hand out everything we have? Let's go out. No, but we can't. It may be against health rules. Well, with more dignity, Dante Gebel and his pastoral team are sent to jail for feeding the hungry. That sounds even better. Let's do it. And we did. We didn't know if it was against the law or not. We went out. Because there are people who are dying of hunger, and we found them. Mothers crying. They didn't have any milk to give their children, their babies. People who were selling out in the streets and couldn't go out anymore. They didn't have any food to eat. They didn't have any savings, of course. And we started way before helping out other nations. And we discovered that what we preached for so long, ministers had to do it. And if we did it, then God would prosper us. You know what happened? The vessels, the jars were empty and oil started to appear. We gathered 12 baskets full. People from around the world. I want to give my offering in river. I want to send my tithe there because you're doing things. Here, they're cowards. But over there, you're doing things. In 2-3 weeks, we had more finances like if we had the church doors open. And that's when the temptation came. Hey, now let's save. And the Lord said, nope. As long as they're empty jars, it's going to be oil. It would come and we would give. It would come and we would give. We don't save 1 cent, believe me or not. In fact, our finances books are open for everyone who wants to see them. Money that comes in, money that goes out. We do not save money because the day we started to save, I'm sure the provision would end. God said, you did it for my little ones, you did it for me. Go out, bless, and feed the poor. That's the secret. It's not like with the pandemic, we had $7 million saved up. We didn't have 1 cent. I'm being honest. I'm going to be brutally honest. God knows I'm not lying. I wouldn't preach if I'm lying right now. It's better for us for the pandemic to be extended than to open the doors. I don't want to open. It's not wise for us to open the church and start to pay more employees. We love people, we love souls, but financially, it's better for us to close our doors and to keep on doing what we're doing. Because people from all over the world are calling and giving. Tell me, how many times in our live streaming have seen me ask for money? Besides the little note that says you can give here. How many times have I said, please give? Never. This works. Give and you receive. It works for people and it works for us. If someone right now is going through a bad financial moment, you never sowed. That's how easy it is. Very wise people have taught us to save and save. But that leaves less space to give and give. And it puts me in a position where my first thought about money is saving and not giving. And the Bible says that the rich man left saddened. But Jesus was even more sad because he knew what divine joy, what divine purpose the young rich man was missing out on. His problem wasn't his wealth. It was that he trusted in his wealth. And that affected what he did with his money. Jesus said, sell everything and give it to the poor. He wasn't telling him, then you're going to die in poverty. If he gave it to the poor, what happened to us was going to happen to him. More blessings would come. He missed out on that. And that tension will be present throughout our entire lives. Everything inside of us will urge us to keep our money very close instead of giving it away. Instead of asking, how can I give or where can I give? Look, the only way that I know to prevent money from becoming an idol, the only way that I know to break the greedy pattern of receiving is the only one that Jesus taught us and shaped us over and over again. The healthy way to handle money is to give it and give it, trusting that God will provide what's necessary. Luke 12:16 says, he also told them a parable. The inheritance of a rich man had produced much, and he thought to himself, what shall I do? I have nowhere to store my fruit. He said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns, I will build larger ones, and there I will store all my fruits and my goods, and I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods to store for many years. Sit back, eat, drink, rejoice eating Argentine meat, drink Argentine wine. But God said, fool, you fool, you knucklehead, tonight they're coming for your soul. And what you have provided, who will it go to? They're just things. This is what happens for those who store up treasures for themselves and is not rich with God. Now, this rich farmer seems like a decent man. He doesn't say that he was dishonest, that he was an usurper. He used the talent that God gave him, and he was successful. Maybe he even dictated seminars, how to fill your barns with success. Empower your barns with 12 easy steps. But Jesus puts him the hat of a fool. You know why? Read carefully the heart of the parable. The guy said, this is what I will do. I will tear down my barns. I will build larger ones. I will store up my fruit. I will say to my soul, you have many goods. Sit back, eat, drink, rejoice. The mistakes weren't his plans. The mistakes was that it didn't include God. He said, I will tear down, build, keep, store. Jesus didn't criticize the wealth of the man, but his arrogance. He didn't criticize the presence of personal goals, but the absence of God in those goals. The accumulation of money or savings is always out of fear. We think that the more we have, the more safer we're going to be. The same insecurity motivated the builders of the Tower of Babel. Genesis 11:4. Let's build ourselves a tower and a city whose top reaches heaven, and let's make a name for ourselves in case we're scattered over the face of the earth. Did you detect the fear of being scattered? Instead of turning to God, they turned to things. They accumulated, they saved and collected. The more things they gathered, the safer they were going to be. Houses, retirement, possessions, savings. Teach the rich of this world not to be proud or to trust their money, but to put their trust in God who gives us abundantly. These guys said, we're safe. No, they were not. And the city that had only one language became into the United Nations, but without interpreters. Confusion always makes us trust God again. You know, I come from the same generation, like most of you, with the fear of there not being enough toilet paper in the bathroom, for example. My dad would say, turn off the light. I'm going to pay a lot in the bill. Close the fridge. The cold is escaping. I don't know where it was running away to. Close the fridge. The light isn't free. That's the mentality that was installed in us for years. When I was a kid, my mother said, drink your soup. One day you're not going to have enough to eat. What a great speech, right? A prep talk. One day, God forbid, but one day you're going to die of hunger. And you're going to remember your mother's broccoli. That day I'm going to be dead. I'm not going to see you die of hunger. You would eat your broccoli, your brother's broccoli. Motivation is always based on fear. And fear never honors God. 1 Timothy 6:17 says, tell the rich of this world, command them not to be arrogant, not to put their hope on their wealth. Tell them to do what's good, to trust in God. Be rich in good works, so they can share everything in abundance. That way they can obtain true life. You do not have to worry about what you're going to eat or what you're going to drink. Don't be anxious. The Lord couldn't be more clearer. Did you know, with shame, The average Christian gives about 1% of his income, right, for the advancement of the kingdom of God. That means that the 99% goes to the world. Like it or not, those that give the most are Catholics. Very below, evangelical Christians, which means that 99% of the heart goes to the world. 2 Corinthians 9:11 says, you will be enriched in every way so that you can be generous, and so that through us, generosity will result in thanksgiving to God. So when you allow the blessings of God to flow through you, you deviate dramatically from the typical mentality of, what do I get from this? Now, the solution is never magical. You have to be willing to live to give and not to live to win. There's no gastric belt for this. There's no magic solution. Giving is a muscle, and there's some muscles that are atrophied. And some people get sick when they see other people's give. Every time we furnish a home, they manifest. Oh, your right hand shouldn't know what your left hand does. It's the only verse they know by memory, because they suffer to see us give others. When in our culture we say, I don't have that much to give, what they're really saying is they don't have so much left over to give, so that way it won't affect their lifestyle. You always have something to give. You even have rice. And the less you have, the more sacrifice implies giving to others, and the more God blesses you. Look, heart transplants are a marvel. Of modern science and medicine. It's not just a physical mechanism of pumping 5,000 liters of blood through 62,000 miles of blood vessels. Studies say that the heart, this was discovered, that the heart creates its own hormones, similar to the brain, and it has a cellular memory. It's proven that whoever receives a transplant also receives sensory reactions, new habits. And we are transplanted in the heart. I will give you a new heart. I will infuse in you a new spirit. I will take away that heart of stone, and I will give you one of flesh, says the scripture. So when I give my heart to Christ, Christ gives you his heart. And you have the responsibility to honor the donor. And the sensory memories of that donor brings you new habits, new compassion, new generosity. You end up feeling what Jesus feels. Your heart breaks for the same thing that breaks his heart. That's the meaning of you will love the Lord with all of your heart. And how do we know if our heart beats like Jesus' heart beats? Well, simple. Because where your treasure is, that's where your heart will also be. If one day you want to know my spiritual situation, all you have to do is just look at my checkbook or my credit card statements. It reveals my priorities. It reveals how I'm doing economically, but more spiritually. It's the best meter for spiritual maturity that I know. Jesus identified a link between love and money. You can give without loving. There are lots of people that give without loving to avoid taxes. I don't know, so many other reasons. Because they want to be famous. There are lots of people that can give without loving, but you cannot love without giving. Oh, I love a lot. Why don't you go and help her? Those who recommend poor, stop it. Everyone knows where they're poor people. I'm tired of those emails. I know an old lady you should help and honor. Don't recommend poor. Help them. Prosperity is not measured in money. There's no such thing as a prosperity gospel. When you reduce a relationship with God to coins, you make the gospel cheap. When you add something to the gospel of prosperity, you're subtracting from it. The gospel in its purest form is the best thing there is. And if someone ever told you that God is going to fill your pockets so you can live in a bigger house, drive a nicer car, so make a covenant, give money, then you swallowed a false gospel. They scammed you. It has nothing to do with your life standard improving. It has to do with improving your standard to give. When God blesses you, it's the best moment to be a blessing to others. God blessed us because he knew we were going to continue to bless others. What's the objective in the giving game? Storing treasures in heaven. That's the eternal dividend. Material prosperity has nothing to do with spiritual prosperity. Otherwise, Donald Trump would be a saint and Mother Teresa would be a sinner. Does God want to prosper you? Of course he does. But he doesn't want to prosper you to give you more luxuries. Because if we selfishly use a blessing, it becomes a curse. We are blessed to bless others. The economical blessing is not an end, it's a means. Making money is the way we make a living. Giving money is a way we live. Question: are you focused on what you have? Or on what you need? This is the difference between gratitude and greed. Are you focused on this life or eternity? Because that's the difference between greed and generosity. If you're focused in heaven, you're focused on the things that you want. Are you focused on the things that you want or the things that others need? That's the difference between selfishness and compassion. Same thing goes with unhappiness and joy. Your focus determines your reality. You focus on the things you want. If you don't, your heart will start to shrink and get smaller. If you focus on the needs of others, you'll realize you have more than enough. If you focus on the here and now, you're going to try to hold on to everything you have. And you have to let go. But if you focus on eternity, you will strip away everything you have. You're going to say, why do we need a bigger house? Look at this huge living room we use only once a year. Why do we want so much? You become more minimalist. Now, God doesn't need your money. God needs your heart. And the heart is where your treasure is. What do you think produces most joy in the heart of God? Worship with the songs that Hillsong has? or invest in lost souls? Which of the two? I'm not taking away worship, right? The power of worship. But which do you think God is more interested in? If compassion is a way of worship, what do you think God prefers? To see you at church worshiping, crying, and move your hands to the sound of the beat and do your prophetic dance? Or feed the man who's living under a bridge? I'm going to finish with his story. And then we're gone. I love this topic because it excites me. I like it because it works. It's like that person who was once bald tried some type of lotion and his hair grew back. Well, same thing happens here with me. It works. I'm convinced of it. It works. It's not like I'm asking you to send us more money. Don't. We're super blessed. It doesn't matter where or with whom, but find someone or some place to help other people with your money. During the pandemic, you know how many people became famous when they would go out to their balconies and sing and applaud medicals? Well, that's the way we should become famous as Christians. There's no way we can stop Christians. They're out in the streets feeding the poor. What about the pandemic? They weren't scared of it. They said they were fulfilling the divine commission. They weren't scared of a virus. But they would go to jail. They would. And in prisons, they would pray. Look at the things that could have happened if we only understood that God said, because you did it to them, you did it to me. A couple of years ago, we went to Uganda. I went to Africa personally with a group of the team, right? With part of the team, the church team, to visit the orphanages and the schools that River has been supporting for years now. And we saw many shacks along the way, but one in particular was more battered than the others in the neighborhood. And it was just a series of torn sheets that had been glued and fixed with 6, 7 sticks, wobbly sticks. And just how on a sidewalk, the family that lived there were cooking something in a pot, right over the fire. The chauffeur got lost and he went inside this neighborhood. And we saw how they were cooking out on the sidewalk. The lady who cooked, later I would find out, like most of the women there, are substitute mothers. They take care of the orphans that live nearby. These women work washing clothes for a wealthy family in Uganda, 2-3 hours away from their own house. They would earn 50 cents a day. But even like this, it would be nighttime and they would cook. They would cook for 8 to 10 children. Someone in the group asked, what are they cooking on the fire? fire. And the interpreter told us, the lady says that tonight they're going to have mud biscuits for dinner. Mud biscuits. I asked, what do they mean, mud biscuits? And mud biscuits were literally what they are. A mix of mud with a little bit of oil. They make a biscuit out of mud. And they explained it that even though they have very little nutritional value, it will temporarily ease the pain caused by hunger. My heart fell to the floor. I thought, Lord, how can this be possible? Our children fight if we force them to eat vegetables, or they argue if we make them eat something that we make. And these malnourished children are literally eating mud with oil. I came back from Africa not only amazed by the horrendous poverty, but I also went back convinced that ever since I was born, I was always a rich person. I was always someone rich. Except that I spent long decades without money. Except that I had lots of decades without money, but I was always rich. That's why when they ask me, Dante, are you rich? I always answer, make no mistake, I'm a millionaire. And you know what? I was also convinced in this trip, seeing these kids eat mud, that everyone that can see me right now through a mobile device, every one of you, by definition, you're rich. All those who are seeing me right now, I doubt your stomachs ache of hunger. If this is you, you're rich. All those who are under a roof, it doesn't matter if it's your own house, if you're renting, you're rich. All those who are watching me through a cell phone, if you have one cell phone, you're rich. Everyone who's watching me right now, and you have more than one piece of clothing, you're rich. Because those children who were eating mud slept naked so that at night they would wash their clothes, dry out during the night so they can have clothes during the day. At nighttime, they would wash it. During the day, they would wear it. All those who today could understand what I said for the simple fact that you ate breakfast and that makes your brain work in a primary way, you're rich. All those, when this message ends, is going to run to the social media, I still don't like the fact of considering myself rich. You're rich, even though you're miserable. If you have food in your fridge, clothes in your closet, a roof over your head, and a place to sleep, you're richer than 75% of the world. Not even to tell you have some money in the bank or in your wallet. You're now among the 8% of the richest people in the world. If you woke up this morning with more health than disease, you're more fortunate than millions of people who are going to die this week. And if you've never experienced the danger of war, the agony of prison or torture, and horrible pain of famine, then you're more fortunate than 500 million people on this earth. If you could see me today, you're luckier than 3 billion people in the world who can access internet. And for all of them, this message goes to. It's easier for a sailor to thread one of his pieces of rope through a needle before you and I can go to heaven. Unless, of course, you put into action the Master's words. Teach the rich people of the world not to be proud, not to trust in their own money, which is unstable. Instruct them to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous, willing to share what they have. This way they will treasure for themselves a future and obtain real life. And I promise you, you will be enriched in every way so that in every occasion you can be generous. So that through your generosity, it may result in thanksgiving to God. So, we're not arguing the fact if you're rich or not. What's being debated is where your treasure is, because that's where your heart is. There are two options. Either you find out in a hospital bed in the final minutes, or you can find out right now and do something about it. Father, I have transmitted what I believe you wanted me to say to these thousands of rich people who are listening to me right now. I've spoken to millionaires. They're going to have warm water. They're going to have a dinner. They're going to have clean sheets. I've spoken to the rich people of the world. That includes Pentecostals, Baptists, Reforms, Jehovah's Witnesses, Muslims, Orthodox Jews, Messianic Jews. I pray for the legalistic people, and I pray for the liberal people, because everyone is listening. How the Lord loves you. How could he not love you? He has you sculpted in his hands. How could he not love you? The Lord loves you so much, princess, he's not willing to give you up because of some miserable dollars. He loves you so much, he speaks directly to you. And he sent me as a messenger to tell you that you're still in time to sow and to bless people. You're still in time to give what you have. It's worth getting into debt for the Lord. It's worth it. If I could go back in time, I could invest in stadiums. We would spend these long years thinking, how are we going to pay this? I would do it again, because the harvest will come to you. God is never in debt with anyone. And you can never give more than he can. Because when you believe that you have a great God, he will also bless you greatly. The Lord blesses you. He loves you. How could he not love you and bless you? In this moment, if you want to receive Jesus, if you want to be part of this army, well then say with me, Lord Jesus, come into my life. Transform my life. Forgive me for my sins and write down my name in the book of life. There's the Lord doing miracles. Can you feel him? It's incredible what I can feel here, and I'm alone. Imagine what's going to happen on the 27th of June when this door opens. We're going to feel an anointing so strong, people are going to be able to
Michigan's tide. Neon dreams paint the city side by side. Got my boombox thumping, hairspray in the air. Tonight's the night, baby, anything can happen, I swear. He's got eyes like fire, a smile like a summer day. And when he looks at me that way, my heart just starts to sway. He's across the room, but I know what he's thinking. Underneath this disco ball, our hearts are gonna be linking. When he's sitting nice, hearts beating like a drum. Got that magic feeling, something beautiful's begun. He's holding out his hand under the neon glow. Tonight we're gonna rewrite the stars, baby, don't you know? We're cruising down Lakeshore Drive, radio blasting our song. He's holding my hand tight, knows how to treat a girl right all night long. We're young, we're wild, got the whole world at our feet. This feeling's electric, baby, can't you feel the heat? He leans in close, whispers secrets in my ear. The city fades away, all I hear is him right here. Fireworks in my soul, this moment's meant to be. Underneath the Chicago moon, he's everything to me. He's got eyes like fire, a smile like a summer day. And when he looks at me that way, my heart just starts to sway. He's across the room, but I know what he's thinking. Underneath this disco ball, our hearts are gonna be linking. When you city nights, hearts beating like a drum. Got that magic feeling, something beautiful's begun. He's holding out his hand under the neon glow. Tonight we're gonna rewrite the stars, baby, don't you know? Beating like a drum. Got that magic feeling, something beautiful's begun. He's holding out his hand under the neon glow. Tonight we're gonna rewrite the stars, baby, don't you know?